Ash, I know what it's like to feel different.
I'm not different. Am I?
We all are. Him especially. But there's something kind of fantastic about that, isn't there?
Every frame of a Wes Anderson film looks like a painting. Anderson understands that realism isn't necessary when making art. Films, like any good story, should be filled with wonder and awe, and although there have been some critiques against Anderson's work, no one can deny that every Wes Anderson film is visually beautiful. Anderson's movies are important to me because they make me feel something. His movies, though different, are like visual jazz. They're eccentric, entertaining, and pretty quirky. Actually, I'm pretty sure if you looked up the definition of quirky, it would just be a photo of Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson's signature visuals and style have become recognizable and well studied within the film community. This distinctive style can fall under the category of quirky or smart cinema. Quirky cinema is a specific style that uses a tone of sensibility to showcase an unusual or eccentric quality. This can be demonstrated through specific music choices, fashion, and design that break away from mainstream media. Smart and quirky cinema offers audiences a sense of distinction compared to big popcorn cinema, which separates audiences into different levels of appreciation.
I already told you. The girls that get it, get it. The girls that don't.
One of my favorite Wes Anderson films, and a pretty good example of smart cinema, is the 2009 stop-motion film Fantastic Mr. Fox. Fantastic Mr. Fox tells the story of our title character, a former chicken thief turned newspaper columnist, as he struggles with a domesticated lifestyle and suppressing his animalistic instincts for the sake of his family. Eventually, his past wins him over, and with the help of a new friend, Mr. Fox secretly goes on nighttime thieving runs behind his wife's back. This is essentially a heist movie, but with more ironic wit, good spirit, and warm heart. Following many other Wes Anderson film themes, this story is fundamentally about personal identity, self-discovery, and embracing who you are. So what specifically separates this film from the others, and what makes it quirky? Complementing the distinctive Wes Anderson style, this film features extensive flat space camera moves, such as pans and tilts, numerous painfully symmetrical wide shots, knollings, walking shots, and montages. These techniques are very distinctive and not commonly shown in blockbuster movies. This style adds to the smart cinema genre. Jeffrey Scantz identified some of the characteristics of smart cinema as cynicism, irony, secular humanism, and cultural relativism. These characteristics are scattered throughout Fantastic Mr. Fox. The main character, Mr. Fox, is basically going through a midlife crisis, and as he struggles to find his purpose, the dialogue and visual elements add a comedic effect that help underwhelm the severity of his emotional turmoil. Quirky films typically combine various types of comedy. In Fantastic Mr. Fox, deadpan, which is dry and often takes moments that could be dramatic and downplays them, is primarily used. I love this scene near the beginning of the movie where Mr. Fox and his wife get caught in a fox trap, and Mr. Fox just points it out and totally downplays it.
No, it just falls straight right down. Whew. I guess it's not spring-loaded.
I'm pregnant.
As previously mentioned, smart cinema can be identified by audiences through music choices, fashion, and design. In terms of music, the Beach Boys song I Get Around plays while Mr. Fox makes his go-for-broke plan, giving the animals their Latin names. The music is upbeat and kind of perfect for describing the scene, but it also adds this additional layer of nostalgia for anyone who either listened to the Beach Boys when they were trendy or just had cool parents. Additionally, this song is played when we're first introduced to our three main villains, as well as during the final brawl. Apparently, this song is also featured in the book, which I think just adds an excellent, unique characteristic and complements the original story. Focusing on the fashion, there are some really quirky fashion choices for this animated movie. Especially considering that our main characters are all animals, and Mr. Fox is a fox who continues to claim that he's wild. Yet he's wearing what appears to be a bold choice of a corduroy coat over a carpet shirt over his actual fur. So that's interesting. And to add, Mr. Fox's son Ash, who, to be fair, is different, wears a white cape throughout the majority of the film. I really don't think that any trendy fast fashion companies are going to be lining up to make any of these outfits. There are numerous different design aspects in Fantastic Mr. Fox that could be considered quirky. Part of this is the attention to detail in the backgrounds of each shot. Literally every scene could be a Renaissance painting, which is already impressive, but this is only amplified by the fact that this film is done entirely in stop-motion clay animation, meaning every object was handmade, and every time something moves, it would have taken the artist hours for each micro-adjustment. Due to the hours of dedication needed to make a 3-second long clip, clay animation isn't a particularly popular style. The actual set designs of the film were heavily inspired by the original book illustrations. Apparently, Wes Anderson was so inspired by Roald Dahl's novels that he actually based some of the sets after Dahl's home. Mr. Fox's office is practically a miniature of Dahl's original writing room. Some other quirky factors found in Fantastic Mr. Fox are how the characters often have these almost out-of-body reality check moments, where the character becomes self-aware. Unlike in other films where the character gradually discovers their flaws, Fantastic Mr. Fox has characters blatantly point them out. This is known as situational awareness. It's a quirky trait as it draws audiences out of the world of the film, kind of like breaking the fourth wall. An example of this is when Mrs. Fox points out the flaws of Foxy's plan. Again, the severity of the situation is masked by a sense of comedic dialogue. There's another scene where Ash is complaining about how his parents don't see him as an athlete, but he's complaining to his parents while facing the camera. It kind of feels like a scene out of The Office, strictly based on how Ash seems to interact with the camera. Again, it draws the audience out of the film and makes them realize that they're actually watching a movie. Another great and quirky characteristic of Fantastic Mr. Fox is the use of title cards. Wes Anderson is literally applying labels to characters and certain elements of the film. Again, this separates audiences from the world of the film. Every time I watch this movie, I feel like I'm watching a high school play, and I mean that in the best way possible. I'm constantly made aware that I am watching a production and not actually a part of that world. From the very small details of characters' fur gradually being flattened as the artists are readjusting the models, to the overtly perfect and unnatural symmetry of certain shots, it's easy to become self-aware that I am an audience member. A more indie cinematic characteristic in this film is that there's a scene where Mr. Fox just opts to give up, and that's okay. He isn't condemned for it. When I first saw this film, I genuinely thought it was just going to end with that as a conclusion. Honestly, I kind of think that would have been better, but although the actual conclusion of this film is pretty happy, it isn't necessarily a Hollywood ending. Instead, the story ends with a grocery store dance party. Even though Mr. Fox is a quirky and different film, I think that's a good thing. But what a shame that they snuck so much cussing into the film.